already dipped to a 56-22 away defeat at Long Eaton in the National League this year. Let's see whether they can do any better. Mind you, the side does look good. They've already done the double over Scottish rivals Edinburgh. Let's take a look at the two teams. And lining up at number 1 for the Glasgow Tigers, Steve Lawson. Number 2 is Martin McKenna. At number 3 is Brian Collins. Number 4 is Colin Caffrey. At 5, Andy Reid. Number 6 is Jim Beaton. And number 7 is David Cassells. Taking a look now at the Stoke signal potters, starting at number 1 with Tom Owen. At number 2, there's rider replacement. So number 3 is Paul Thorpe. Number 4 is Graham Jones. 5, Mike Wilding. Number 6 is Ian Stead. Number 7, Daz Sumner. And the number 8, nominated under the rider replacement scheme, Richard Smith. And the man injured and out of the team is Nigel Crabtree. They're using rider replacement at number 2, then the Stoke signal potters. More details about that as we go into the match, but those are the 14 riders here representing the two sides. Stoke against Glasgow here in the National League. Well, it wasn't so long ago we showed you a challenge match here from Luma Road when Stoke beat Long Eaton by 46 points to 32. Since then, they have, of course, lost the services of Nigel Crabtree. They drew 39-all against Birmingham in the challenge and lost at home to Ellesmere Port 36-42. Mind you, when the league season opened, it opened with a win, 43-35 against Milton Keynes here last Saturday, followed up by a 4-point defeat at Eastbourne on the Sunday. As for the Glasgow Tigers, only 2 league matches so far, 22-56 as I mentioned at Long Eaton, and 46-32 at home to Poole Wildcats. So that's the form for the two sides as we go into this National League match here tonight at Chesterton. Well, Steve Lawson lines up in white then in Heat 1. 10.40 was his average last year, top man in the National League, as he has been on a couple of occasions in the past. A tall scoring rider last year, 349 points plus 10 bonus, for a total just a shade under 360. Last year here at Stoke, scored 12 points from 5 starts, and indeed has had double figures on his past 4 appearances here at Stoke. And riders lining up at the start in red, Tom Owen. And the man in blue is the rider replacement, Graham Jones. Just to explain the rider replacement system, when a heat leader, that is one of the top 3 men in the side, on average, is ruled out through injury, the side can operate rider replacement. It's quite simple. You just share out his rides among the rest of the members of the team. They all get 1 opportunity each. It's rather like tactical substitutes, but it applies no matter what the score is. So the lineup then in Heat 1, on the inside gate in red, Tom Owen. Next to him in white, Steve Lawson. Gate 3 in blue, Graham Jones. And gate 4 in yellow and black, Martin McKenna. Yes, Jones takes the rider replacement ride here in Heat 1. So the number 2 race jacket will not be used all night, and that number 8 man, Richard Smith, can be used in those number 2 slotted rides if necessary, if it's so decreed. So it's a way to compensate for the loss of Crabtree, and of course any other rider in such a circumstance. Well, Graham Jones has been riding into form recently, and he joins Tom Owen out in front. 3rd place in white is Steve Lawson. 4th in yellow and black is Martin McKenna. Lawson now carving through on the inside of Graham Jones. And it's often a one-man fight with Steve Lawson leading the fight for the Glasgow Tigers, although he does get Andy Reid and support from Brian Collins. But 1 or 2 of the youngsters in the Glasgow side can come up with the points away from home. Very much a side that gets the points at home at Craighead Park up in Blantyre. Indeed, in the last 50 away league matches, have only had 1 win and 1 draw. So now, the man in 2nd place, Steve Lawson, 1 lap to go, trying to reel in the lead of Tom Owen. Tom Owen, the number 1 man here at Stoke, both in riding number and in average. 9.76 score last year for the signal potters. Good to see him back at his best. Around the final turn, it's a win in red for Tom Owen. 2nd in white was Steve Lawson. 3rd in blue, hammering his handlebars there as he went into the turn. Obvious frustration there at dropping a point. In 3rd place, Graham Jones. And 4th in yellow and black for the Glasgow Tigers was Martin McKenna. A 4-2 heat win then to the signal potters, and the score after 1 race reads Stoke 4 and Glasgow 2. So the man in white, Steve Lawson, was beaten there, this time by Tom Owen. Interesting to see if he suffers any further defeats here tonight. Very much the class rider of the National League, but of course under threat this year with so many British League men in. Lining up for the Tigers then in Heat 2 is the man in white, Jim Beaton. Jim, the elder brother of Edinburgh's Bobby Beaton, 30 years of age. been riding on and off since 1971 when he rode in the old Glasgow second halves in the days at Hampden Park. Craighead Park, not quite in Hampden's class. It all goes to show how things have changed up there north of the border. Jim Beaton, the man who had a very serious car crash early on in his career that put him out of Speedway for 3 years. He lines up on the inside. Next to him in blue, Daz Sumner. Gate 3 yellow and black, David Cassells, and gate 4 in red, instead. I correct myself on that. It was a racing injury that made Jim Beaton have severe problems controlling with his hand. Nonetheless, he's second in Heat 2. Ian Stead's out in front. Jim Beaton second. Third in yellow and black, David Cassells. But there goes Cassells down into the fence. Young man who made his mark during the 82-83 seasons, but making his mark on the safety fence there in Heat 2. The red lights go on and the race is stopped. We await a decision by the referee, and it's the man in yellow and black, David Cassells, who indeed is excluded for being the primary cause of the stoppage. Referee tonight, Mr. Vic Harris, applies the yellow and black exclusion light, and so it's one Tiger only in the rerun of Heat 2. Not the best of starts for Glasgow in the second race. Stead and Sumner looking very good, but it's Jim Beaton on his own in the rerun. There, by the way, on the centre green, you saw for a moment Nigel Crabtree. In the meantime, though, David Cassells walks back into the pits disconsolate after that fall. Riders setting off now in the restart of Heat 2. The man in red leads, Ian Stead. Second in white is Jim Beaton. Third in blue, Daz Sumner. Darren Sumner, known as Daz, slipping through into second place. Someone said he has to be a clean rider with a name like that. Darren Sumner, a member of the Bellevue Colts last year, now in the National League with the Stoke Signal Potters in his first season. Third in white, Jim Beaton. And indeed, Jim Beaton went one season where indeed he wasn't seen outside Scotland, rode a complete home season for the Glasgow Tigers, rode one away match at Edinburgh, and that was it. Never seen south of the border. That was a few years ago, though. He's been a bit more adventurous since then. Ian Stead there out in front. Stead, a 4.5-point man in the 84 season. He surely is set for big things in this, his third season with the Signal Potters. Second in blue, Daz Sumner, the youngster, shaping up well here. Stoke heading home for a 5-1 to give them a 6-point lead. And indeed, off the pit turn, coming in for the win in red, Ian Stead. In blue, Daz Sumner. And third in white, a good way back, Jim Beaton couldn't take them on alone. A 5-1 heat win then to the Signal Potters, and the score after 2 races here at Stoke is the Stoke Signal Potters 9 and the Glasgow Tigers 3. So not the best of starts for Glasgow. They're going to need some points tonight from some of the backup men because Lawson can't do the job on his own. So instead heads back into the pits after a fine win in his opening race. And indeed, after 4 points against Milton Keynes last week, looking for a high score here against the Glasgow Tigers. Yellow and black in Heat 3 is Colin Caffrey. It's good to see Colin back in the saddle after missing the opening matches of the season. Always you hear at the start of every year, courtesy of Dick Barry, many stories about Colin Caffrey as to whether he will or will not be riding. A confirmed ice hockey nut these days, watching the Glasgow Dynamos up at the Crossmaloof rink in Glasgow's second city, or rather Scotland's second city. Colin Caffrey, though, did have a delayed start to this year and indeed made his debut for the season last night against Birmingham. There's Andy Reid now in shot. Andy Reid, a Glasgow man for a few seasons now, although had a brief spell up at Cradley Heath, indeed still officially a loanee to Glasgow from Cradley Heath, or so I believe. Andy Reid, 28 years of age. A man who has ridden at Stoke in the past, 1976 season. Prior to that, rode for the Crew Kings at the Old Earl Street Raceway in 74 and 75. Also rode for Ellesmere Port, so he's been around the northwest. Also ridden for Workington and Barrow, so he's had virtually a grand tour of the counties north of here. So the man in red in Heat 3 is Mike Wilding. Mike, a Scunthorpe Stag and a Cradley Heathen last year. Didn't have a very good time with Cradley, though, and moved back into the National League. But now turns up at Stoke, where he is also a man who's returning to a track where he rode a good while ago. He rode in 1980 for the Stoke Potters before the whole team moved on to Wolverhampton for the 81 season. Glasgow Tigers then at the start line. There's 1 minute remaining for the man in blue, Graham Jones, taking his second ride of the meeting. The green light being pointed out to the Glasgow Tigers, the green starting light. What you can see the light being flashed. Indeed, that is the yellow 2-minute warning light. They have a light that flashes during each time allowance to tell everybody that they are under 2 minutes. All 4 riders go under 2 minutes whenever there's a 2-minute allowance now. It's not a matter of applying it to individual riders. So if the man in blue comes out, one of these develops a machine problem inside, or indeed outside the 2 minutes, they're out of the race. It's a new thing for this season. But even if you're the first man out, you can still fall victim to the 2-minute exclusions. So Wilding looks around for his partner. Nigel Crabtree, in the meantime, hopping back into the pits. He's certainly getting about. He was at Mildenhall, of course, the other week. Now there, next to Wilding at the start, Andy Reid. But Mike Wilding, at 24 years of age, back in the National League, he thought he'd left at the start of '83. Had an average below 2, and indeed turns around as he finds out that his partner, Graham Jones, is excluded for exceeding the 2-minute time allowance. The situation now is that he can be replaced by one of the 2 reserves, either Ian Stead or Daz Sumner. Doesn't count as a ride, by the way. That is quite a bike that Andy Reid's got, and I'm sure you'll agree. We've seen spoilers on the back wheel, but one on the front wheel as well. Yes, you'd have thought that Craighead Park was about a 600-yard track with that kind of spoiler arrangement on there. They're usually used on long-track bikes out in the 1,000-metre circuits on the continent, but Andy adopting spoilers front and rear. I think that might be an invitation for a sponsor. Riders at the tapes now for Heat 3 on the inside gate in red, Mike Wilding. Next to him in white, Andy Reid. Gate 3 in blue, the reserve replacement, Daz Sumner. And on the outside in yellow and black, Colin Caffrey. Got away from the start, a crucial first turn for Reid, and he's made it. Reid leads off in white. Second and third, though, are the signal potters through Wilding and Sumner. At the back in yellow and black is Colin Caffrey. Well, that really is quite a sight. Solidly boxed-in wheel there. You certainly can't mistake the Andy Reid bike these days. Daz Sumner going out wide. Now the challenge being taken up by Mike Wilding. Andy Reid being gradually overhauled by Wilding as he goes onto the outside line. Wilding's been going particularly well recently. Heads onto the outside line. He had 9 paid 12 from 5 against Milton Keynes last week, so he's riding on the crest of a wave. And there he goes down the back straight, through into first place. Wilding leads. Reid seems to be a little unsteady there going around the turn. That's given the chance now for Darren Sumner to challenge. The youngster really is adapting well to National League Speedway after his time with the Bellevue Colts. But Reid just holding on to the throttle, holding on to his second place, going down the back straight. Around the final turn, the pits turn for the last time. The man in red wins, Mike Wilding. Second in white, Andy Reid. Third in blue, Darren Sumner. And fourth in yellow and black, Colin Caffrey. A good race there, with Mike Wilding coming from the back to get the win. And that's 3 wins out of 3 for the signal potters. And this time, indeed, another heat advantage. A 4-2 heat advantage out of Heat 3 gives us a scoreline of Stoke 13 and Glasgow 5 after only 3 starts. Glasgow slipping away. So a good win for Mike Wilding. It's good to see him full of confidence once more after a terrible '84 season for him. Coming out now for the signal potters in Heat 4 is Paul Thorpe. Paul, who really developed at the tail end of the '84 season. Indeed got a sponsor at the midway point there, being advised by Nigel Crabtree. Paul, the current track record holder, I think, still, yes, indeed, here at Luma Road. Set a time of 62.1 on the 28th of July last year. And that was in a spell where he was virtually unbeatable around this Chesterton circuit. Paul Thorpe then lines up in red, married, or rather his sister is married to Mark Fiora of the Middlesbrough Tigers. In the meantime, Crabtree's passing on a bit of advice to Ian Stead. Well, we saw Nigel Crabtree down at Mildenhall when Scunthorpe were there. It seems you can't keep the man out of Speedway, even with that broken ankle. Ian Stead, the winner of Heat 2, had 4 points against Milton Keynes, failed to score at Eastbourne in the opening away National League match, but some very useful scores in the challenge matches here at Luma Road. 6 paid 7 against Long Eaton, 7 paid 8 against Birmingham, but only 4 against Ellesmere Port. Ian Stead then sets off down to the start, where we see in yellow and black David Cassels, the man who crashed in Heat 2 and was excluded. Young David had 4 paid 5 at Edinburgh in that challenge match victory at Powder Hall for the Glasgow Tigers. Always a satisfying time for Glasgow to win away from home, but especially special when it's at Edinburgh. Indeed, they took the double in the Scottish Triangle over the Edinburgh Stelrad Monarchs by 42-35 at Powder Hall and 44-34 at home at Craighead Park. So the 4 riders at the start now for the 4th heat. On the inside in white, Brian Collins. Next to him in blue, Ian Stead. And next to him in yellow and black, David Cassels. And the man on the outside is Paul Thorpe. Brian Collins, very much a key man in the Glasgow side, the veteran rider, now 36 years of age. He's seen it all in this time. And this time sees the two Stoke riders disappearing into the dust down the back straights. The man in blue leads, Ian Stead. Paul Thorpe is second. Third in white, Brian Collins. And fourth in yellow and black, David Cassels. Well, the meeting's being hurried along here tonight at Luma Road for the simple reason that the skies overhead are looking very menacing. And that's also why I think the track hasn't got quite as much water on it as you might have expected, so we are getting a fair bit of dust, because I think John Dews is expecting that the heavens will do the watering themselves. Of course, we don't want a rained-off meeting. Ian Stead leads. Paul Thorpe is second. Third in white, a good way behind, is Brian Collins, and David Cassels is out of the race in yellow and black, so it's a comfortable team-ridden 5-1 with 1 lap to go, and it looks set to stay that way. Stead and Thorpe just easing it down. You just saw a flash in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. That was Brian Collins, who is now something like 40 or 50 yards behind. The flying home pair, the Signal Potters, setting off with a real canter here tonight against the Glasgow Tigers. The winner in red, Paul Thorpe. Second in blue, Ian Stead. Third in white, Brian Collins. David Cassels, a non-finisher. 5-1 to the Stoke Signal Potters, and the pattern is developing. A 4-2 followed by a 5-1. That's been the routine in the opening 4 races. And the score now reads Stoke 18, Glasgow 6, and I think we're in for a very high-scoring meeting for the Signal Potters here tonight. A good chance to boost their averages. So Paul Thorpe goes back into the pits. That's 4 heats, all won by the man in the red helmet colour. And Brian Collins having to give third best there in third place. And indeed disappointing there for Glasgow. It's only really Steve Lawson and Andy Reid who are putting up the fight there. The only men to head home a Signal Potter at this stage of the meeting. By the way, in the background there, up in the top left, you can see the Glasgow team coach, one of Beaton's travel. Indeed, yes, the Beaton's heavily involved in Glasgow Speedway. You've got Jim Beaton racing out there. You've got Beaton, Mr. Beaton Senior is involved on the promotion side. And everyone travels in the Beaton company coach, which is often driven by Bobby Beaton of Edinburgh. So you can't keep away from the Beatons if you're a Glasgow Tiger supporter, for sure, even if you wanted to, which I very much doubt. There it is, very nice sunny. That's a Bova Futura on a Volvo if you're into coaches. I'm not giving anything away, but I think you might have discovered my hobby there. Martin McKenna comes out now in heat 5. Martin, the youngest of 3 racing McKenna brothers. There's Charlie at Berwick, Kenny at Bellevue, and young Martin at Glasgow. All 3 products of the Glasgow Youth Training School. In the meantime, the riders down by the pit gates. There's the man in red, Mike Wilding, the winner of heat 3. And you really must wonder whether Glasgow are going to put up any kind of a real fight here tonight. It's so often, I'm afraid, a 2-man battle, or sometimes only even a 1-man battle for Steve Lawson. And it looks as if tonight that the second strings haven't got their racing boots on tonight, because of course they did go down by 34 points at Long Eaton in their National League opening away match. And it looks as if there's a possibility of such a score here tonight. Let's hope it's not too uncompetitive. There in blue, Graham Jones, able to beat the 2 minutes this time. He's had problems, obviously, earlier on, but now out. And lines up in blue on gate 1, or indeed he'll move over to gate 2 because his partner's off gate 4. There's the man in white, Steve Lawson, from Cumbria, indeed just north of Workington. I think he lives on a farm out there. Got his own training track. There's a beautifully broad West Cumbrian accent, so we were informed by the ever-present Mr. Barry. And in case you're wondering about the interference on your picture, don't worry, that's coming from the bikes themselves. As you can imagine, they're not fitted with suppressors, and unfortunately, when we do go in close, we do tend to get a bit of interference on the picture. There again, that's the price for getting the close-up shot. So Mike Wilding lines up on gate 4. The full lineup now for the 5th race. On the inside in white, Steve Lawson. Next to him in blue will be Graham Jones. Gate 3 in yellow and black, Martin McKenna. Gate 4 in red, Mike Wilding. Well, I did notice in the match against Long Eaton that the Stoke Heat leaders were winning everything off gate 4, and it's interesting to note the Wildings on 4 in this one. Wilding transferred up to a heat leader berth with the injury to Crabtree, and indeed fulfilling that status since that move. Of course, in reality, a top-class rider really emerged at Scunthorpe a couple of years back. Wilding goes out wide. Graham Jones has just been pipped for 3rd place, and indeed at the moment it's a Glasgow 4-2. Lawson leads. Second in red is Mike Wilding. Third in yellow and black, Martin McKenna. And fourth in blue, Graham Jones. So the Tigers begin to bite in Heat 5 as they claw their way back, if we can extend the metaphor a little further. Yes, Tigers first and third. Steve Lawson showing that fine style. Indeed, now is the brother-in-law of Andy Reid, with Steve's sister having married Andy during the winter. Steve's sister, indeed, the National League, Miss National League, won at Wimbledon last year, the beauty contest. And there is the race for third and fourth, Martin McKenna and Graham Jones. And indeed, McKenna holding out well for the third place in front of Jones, who does not seem to be quite as fast as he might have thought. I hoped he would be there, lifting a little too far. Managed to hold on to the bike, though. Fine example of maintaining control. The winner in white, Steve Lawson. Second in red, Mike Wilding. Third in yellow and black, Martin McKenna. And fourth in blue, Graham Jones. That's much more like it from the Glasgow Tigers. Taking a heat advantage of 4-2 in Heat 5 to close the gap now to 10 points. And it's all a little bit more manageable at Stoke 20 and Glasgow 10, but Glasgow need a few more of those. Steve Lawson coming in for the victory. And indeed, it'll be interesting to see whether he can ride unbeaten after that Tom Owen defeat in Heat 1. Well, Paul, it's looking a fairly easy job against Glasgow at the moment. How's the track riding?
The track's really good, you know. I don't think Glasgow expects it to be this dry and this slick, because their track is kind of small, deep and rough, and I think they've got the engine set up a bit different to what we have, and it's paying off for us because we're running away with it at the moment.
Well, how pleased are you with your 85 season so far? I saw it was only 4 paid 5 from 5 against Milton Keynes. You're looking for an improved score here tonight. Yeah,
well, hopefully that's a bit low. I mean, I tried for more, but I fell off and I stopped in one race, but that couldn't be helped. And hopefully I can do a bit better tonight.
Now, you were really noticeable last year when you came through for a 7.5 point average at the second half of the season. It was very much a season of two halves. What was the change?
I don't know really. I kind of got my act together a bit more and give 100% and what have you, and it just paid off.
You got some useful sponsorship as well, didn't you?
Yeah, well, Norman Smith of Congleton Limited Road Markings is sponsoring me now, and it's helping me a lot because my engines are tip-top and the bikes are tip-top.
They have an interesting job, don't they, Norman Smith group of companies?
Pardon?
Don't they perform an interesting service, don't they, that group of companies, Norman Smith?
Yeah,
Someone told me they painted something.
Pardon?
Someone told me they painted white lines in places.
That's right, yeah, they do all the white lines on the motorway and the central roads, so I'm going to have to go. I'm in this race.
Right, OK, thanks. Well, indeed, Paul Thorpe does come out in Heat 6. He's the rider replacement in blue, but the other three riders are at the start. In white, Brian Collins. In red, Tom Owen. And in yellow and black, Jim Beaton. Well, we were caught out there. We didn't realise that Paul was coming out in this race, otherwise we wouldn't have detained him before the start of the heat. Let's hope that he's properly set up. Oh dear, I think the referee's put the 2-minute time allowance on. If he goes out on the 2-minute exclusion, there'll be 1 or 2 red faces around here, I can assure you. Anyway, the riders come to the start for the 6th race. Honestly, we're not working on behalf of Glasgow here to try and make it a close match. Leave it up to them. Still, they're only 10 points down. Let's see if they can keep up the fight. Certainly that Heat 4 or Heat 5 4-2 was welcome to keep this match competitive. At 18-6, it was looking like it was slipping away. In the 6th race, on the inside gate in white, then Brian Collins. Next to him in red, Tom Owen. Gate 3, yellow and black, Jim Beaton. Gate 4 in blue, Paul Thorpe. Green light shows, and the riders are away. Thorpe off the outside gate, joining his partner. Owen and Thorpe, the top 2 men in the absence of Nigel Crabtree, so the signal potters would be expecting a 5-1, and indeed, that's what they're getting here in Heat 6. Shrugging off that momentary revival by the Glasgow Tigers. Third in white, Brian Collins, and fourth in yellow and black, Jim Beaton. Collins and Beaton approaching the veteran stage, certainly in the case of Collins, 36 years of age. Ridden since the mid-60s, where he started off with the old Edinburgh Monarchs in the old days at Old Meadowbank. They're leading in blue, Paul Thorpe. Tom Owen second in red. Signal Potters cruising round now for the 5-1. 1 lap to go. And it looks as if Paul Thorpe's not been put off at all by that delay before the start of the 6th race. Thorpe and Owen riding home for the points, and they're a good 40-50 yards ahead of the 3rd place man. It's looking good for Stoke here tonight. The winner in blue, Paul Thorpe. Second in red, Tom Owen. Third in white, Brian Collins. And fourth in yellow and black, Jim Beaton. A 5-1 heat advantage. Stoke 25, Glasgow 11 is the score now after the 6th race. And our undying thanks there to Paul Thorpe for doing that interview in such extenuating circumstances. You would have expected him to say, sorry, I'm too busy, and go back in the pits. So thanks very much to Paul, and indeed he gets his reward with a win there in the 6th race. Thankfully, made the 2-minute time allowance. So Brian Collins only 2 points for his first 2 starts, so he'll be looking for an improvement later on. And Jim Beaton only 1 from 2. Dave Thompson walks back into the pits, looking a worried man. Dave Thompson, of course, the boss of the Glasgow Tigers. And guess who's coming out in this one? Andy Reid. Yes, you guessed it. Instead, now coming out for his 3rd programmed ride. He's got 5 paid 6 from his first 2 starts. Adjusts the throttle cable there, and puts on the so important gloves. You can imagine some of the shale, if it comes up and hits your hand without the gloves on, you'd have tremendous problems. Mind you, 1 or 2 riders have tried it. So instead, you can see the flippers on the end of the peak of his helmet. They're gradually dispensed with during the race as the shale accumulates on them. And sometimes even on a bad night you even have to get rid of the goggles. That's the cutout lead he's just fitting over his wrist. When he falls off the bike, or if he falls off the bike rather we should say, that cutout lead is supposed to pull out, as it says, a cutout, and stop the engine. Riders now going down to the start for Heat 7. Well, indeed, it's a drive-in speedway here at Stoke, as you can see from those cars parked on the back straight. So it's quite a nice opportunity to come out here, sit in your car and watch a meeting, or, of course, there's a very good grandstand, bar and restaurant. Of course, Stoke, a multi-sport stadium. It's not just used for speedway. It also has greyhound racing on Wednesdays and Fridays here at Newcastle Stadium, just north of Newcastle under Lyme, here at Chesterton. The full lineup then in Heat 7 on the inside in white, Andy Reid. Next to him in blue, Ian Stead. Gate 3 in yellow and black, Colin Caffrey, and Gate 4 in red, Paul Thorpe. So it is a busy time for Paul Thorpe. That interview, now 2 races on the trot. 25-11, I'll remind you, it's the scoreline. Glasgow with a lot of work to do here at Luma Road. And indeed, they're eclipsed going into the first turn. Andy Reid trying on the inside line, but it's Ian Stead who leads. Second is Paul Thorpe. Third in white hand is Andy Reid. Thorpe correcting a rather awkward line there on the pit turn, settling in now to second. Ian Stead is looking good tonight, unbeaten by an opponent and looking likely to remain so. Andy Reid back in 3rd, and in 4th is Colin Caffrey. Well, apart from Martin McKenna, it's only Reid and Lawson who are scoring the points for the Tigers, and Reid this time being headed back into 3rd place. And each time Reid or Lawson are headed back, it looks increasingly like a high 50s score here tonight for the Stoke Signal Potters. Off the pit turn, Thorpe looking around anxiously. He might have some problems. Looking for Andy Reid, he might be wondering whether he can last, although the bike does seem to be running smoothly. Again looking around quite agitatedly. That can indeed earn an exclusion from the referee. He's going wide there, cuts back in now. Racing to the line, it's a win in blue for Ian Stead. Unbeaten by an opponent now in 3 starts. Second in red, Paul Thorpe. And third in white, Andy Reid. 4th in yellow and black, Colin Caffrey. A 5-1 heat win to the Signal Potters. And the score now with 6 heats remaining. Stoke 30 and Glasgow 12. An 18-point lead now. And the Signal Potters well on the way to victory. Let's take a look now at the score charts so far at the 7th race. All riders bar one have had 2 starts. Indeed, all have had 2 starts, of course, tonight with rider replacement in force. Looking at the Stoke Signal Potters, well, look at all those heat wins, and most of those second places are paid wins as well. Tom Owen 5 paid 6, Thorpe 8 paid 9, both unbeaten by an opponent. Mike Wiley beaten only by Steve Lawson. Graham Jones struggling a little on 1 point. He instead, though, backing it well with 8 paid 9. And Daz Sumner coming in with 3 paid 4. For Glasgow, looking at them, it's only Steve Lawson really mounting a challenge on 5 points. Andy Reid has 3. Martin McKenna's also beaten the Signal Potter, but apart from that, it's all pretty dismal stuff for the Scottish visitors here tonight. Well, rider replacement slot in Heat 8 is filled by Tom Owen, the number 1, filling in the only race, indeed, where he can do so, being partnered with the number 2 normally. So it's Tom Owen riding in red in Heat 8. In blue will be Daz Sumner, in white Martin McKenna, and the tactical substitute in yellow and black for Glasgow, Steve Lawson. And I feel that that tactical substitution is the main reason why you're not seeing the number 8 coming out in Heat 8, Richard Smith, with the Signal Potters already 18 points up. It will be tempting, surely, for him to be given the ride at some time. But with Lawson out there, I think John Hughes is feeling that he better have an opponent out here, so he puts Tom Owen. So a fascinating race here. Two top National League riders lining up here next to each other at the start of Heat 8. On the inside in yellow and black is Steve Lawson. Next to him in red, Tom Owen. Gate 3 in white, Martin McKenna. Gate 4 in blue, Daz Sumner. Tough race here for Messrs McKenna and Sumner, with Lawson and Owen on the inside. And it's Owen who's caught Lawson going into the turn. He's already beaten him once. In the meantime, though, McKenna's sorting out Daz Sumner, and Glasgow have second and third. Looks like Glasgow are going to be coming in for their first bonus point of the night. The man in white there gets the bonus point, of course, if it stays this way, for following his partner home in a scoring position. And, of course, preserves team racing. The bonus point only counts in averages and pay. Owen leads, Lawson second. So the battle of the two number ones being won once more by Tom Owen. But Lawson's coming in closer all the time. No Owen pulling away down the straights. Lawson seems to reel him in a bit on the turns. McKenna still holding out Daz Sumner. Sumner seems to have found the gap. Lawson, in the meantime, though, is still staring at the tyre tracks of Tom Owen as Owen leads, coming down the home straight for the penultimate time. It's Owen from Lawson. The race on for third place now, and there's Sumner through on the inside of McKenna. So a good race there for the teenager. Through on the inside of McKenna, and coming in for the win in red is Tom Owen. Second in yellow and black, Steve Lawson. Third in blue, Daz Sumner, and fourth in white, Martin McKenna. A 4-2 heat win then for the Signal Potters, and the tactical substitution is fought off. There you see the cars lending their own tribute to the riders as they come down the back straight. A 4-2 heat win then to Stoke once more, and of course the scoreline now is extended even further in the favour of the Signal Potters. It's now Stoke 34, Glasgow 14, with only 5 heats remaining here at Luma Road. It looks like you could almost say now that the National League points are remaining here in Staffordshire. Tactical substitution for Glasgow in Heat 9 rather, is Andy Reid. As the back of the leathers confirms, you see Glasgow are one of the teams adopting these pin-on numbers, the press stud securing them. Mind you, the original idea was to put the rider's name on the race jacket. That's why you can give a rider a personalised race jacket and then just change the numbers over. One or two teams, though, Wimbledon also, are adopting them without actually putting a personalisation on the race jackets. Anyway, nonetheless, Andy Reid, pardon me, lines up in yellow and black in Heat 9, partnering Brian Collins. And that all-white machine is standing pretty well to the dirt here tonight. And the two Tigers set off towards the start. We're waiting for them, Mike Wilding in red and Graham Jones in blue. Reid comes in to take up the inside gate position in yellow and black. Next to him in blue is Graham Jones, and off 3 in white is Brian Collins. Off 4 in red, Mike Wilding. Well, this Stoke pairing shares, or rather has the record of being the only Stoke pairing tonight to be beaten by the Glasgow Tigers. Well, the Tigers get a heat advantage. Wilding and Jones back in Heat 5 when Lawson and McKenna did it. Interesting to see whether it happens again here, although Wilding has looked good. He comes off the outside gate, but he's beaten to the turn by Andy Reid. Wilding seems to run out of track somewhat coming out of the second turn. The man in blue, Graham Jones, closing in all the time on the Tigers' heat leader. Andy Reid, 28 years of age, a 7.73 man in 1984. 242 points plus 19 bonus for a total of 261. Andy Reid, 2 full maximums against Edinburgh in those challenge matches. A record shared by Steve Lawson, who also scored maximums, of course, 212 points. Reid starting off well in that, but only 6 points along Eton in the National League opener away from home. And indeed only 3 paid 5 against Poole in the home opener. So Reid finding his National League form somewhat now. He's had 3 from his first 2 rides, heading home for his first heat win if he can hold on. Although he locks up there on the turn, and closing in now is Graham Jones in blue. 1 lap to go, and this is developing into a race now with the Signal Potters closing in all the time now on Reid. Reid leads. Second in blue is Graham Jones. Third in red, Mike Wilding. And a good way down in white is Brian Collins. Around the final turn, plume of shale left by Mike Wilding, but he can't get on terms. It's a win in yellow and black for Andy Reid. Second in blue, Graham Jones. Third in red, Mike Wilding. Fourth in white, Brian Collins. So Glasgow have their second race winner of the night, but no heat advantage this time with Brian Collins at the back. It's a shared race. 3-3 on the score now with 4 to go here at Luma Road. Is Stoke 37 and Glasgow 17. So that's it. Barring, well indeed, not even barring miracles, those league points are now definitely secured by the Signal Potters. Well, lining up in blue in Heat 10, making his National League debut here, Richard Smith. Richard, one of the juniors going through the training scheme here at Loomer Road, comes out now to take the rider replacement slot in Heat 10. So there's a prime case, or indeed the case, of number 8 coming out to take a rider replacement slot. Can take all 4. Interesting nickname on the back of the leathers, Wolfie. So, getting some advice passed on by one of the men most qualified to pass it on, Tom Owen. Richard Smith then puts on the goggles. One of a fairly impressive bunch of Stoke juniors. Also coming through the ranks here are Mark Ferry, Tony Atkins, and also a man with a young lad with a rather famous name. If you go back into Second Division Speedway, back in the early 70s, Nigel Harry. Of course, his father, John, was well known around the Ipswich and Peterborough scenes in the early days of this league when it was British League Division 2. Now Nigel shows up, and of course John was at Coventry for a while. So that's some of the other junior strength. In this race, though, we see Richard Smith coming out in blue for his National League debut. In yellow and black, Colin Caffrey. In red, Tom Owen, and the missing man in white, Andy Reid. Well, Andy Reid, a winner of Heat 9, so could be a competitive Heat 10 here. Tom Owen waits on gate 2. In the meantime, we're waiting for the man in white, and out he comes, Andy Reid. I wonder if that bite's going to start a fashion. Do I hear some people saying no? Anyway, certainly a distinctive sight. Andy Reid lines up on the inside gate in white. Next to Reid is Tom Owen. In yellow and black, Colin Caffrey. In blue, Richard Smith. So can the young man in blue pick up his first National League points in his first ride? Heat 10 will show that. Away from the start, Reid's got the advantage off the inside gate. Owen going wide in second. Richard Smith taking a handful and seeing the man in yellow and black, Colin Caffrey, disappear away. Tom Owen just sweeps through on the inside of Andy Reid. Tom Owen leads. Second in white, Andy Reid. Third in yellow and black, Colin Caffrey. And fourth in blue, Richard Smith. Well, Stoke 20 points up. They're really now riding for an academic scoreline just to boost up the pay packets, boost up the averages here tonight at Loomer Road. 20 points up going into this heat. But it seems to be that that lead will not be extended. There's one lap to go, and young Smith's at the back with Owen out in front. Reid and Caffrey in second and third, and it's an equal distance almost between first and second as that between third and fourth. Around the pit turn for the final time, coming in for the win, riding the white line impeccably there. In red, Tom Owen. Tom Owen still unbeaten by an opponent. Second in white, Andy Reid. Third in yellow and black, Colin Caffrey. And fourth in blue, Richard Smith. A 3-3 drawn heat, and with 3 races to go, it's Stoke 40 and Glasgow Tigers 20. So Tom Owen now moves up to 11, paid 12, with 1 programmed ride yet to come. Richard Smith fails to open his account. Andy Reid now moves up to a total of 8 points, and Colin Caffrey picks up his first point of the night, plus a bonus point for 1 paid 2. Well, you've been hearing that we've been mentioning Signal all the way through tonight's programme, and indeed Signal Radio are the backers of Stoke Speedway, as they were last year, and of course performing a valuable service that's on the radio wavelengths, just as we hope we are on your cable television sets. So now, Heat 11, riding in blue, Daz Sumner. Daz with 4 paid 5, and that's equals his best score against Milton Keynes last week in his first full season in the National League. 4 paid 5 against Milton Keynes, scored 3 paid 5 down in Eastbourne, which is a very impressive start for a youngster on the tricky Arlington circuit. Assessed with a 2-point average, of course, coming into the sport in the league capacity for the first time. Meanwhile, down at the start, a man at the opposite end of the spectrum, you might say, Steve Lawson, 10.4 man from last year, lines up on the inside gate in white. Next to him in blue is Sumner, waiting for the man in yellow and black, just edging up to the start now, Martin McKenna. And on the outside, in red, is Paul Thorpe. Thorpe, 8 paid 9, beaten only by his partner, and of course, got the bonus point to make the 8 into a 9 overall. Of course, on the night, only 8 points count towards the team score. 40-20 then, 3 heats to go here at Luma Road. Showing up well there in white is Steve Lawson, but that outside gate is used so well and so profitably by the Stoke signal potters as Thorpe comes up. But Lawson is not the kind of man to give that kind of advantage to, because Lawson pulls away. Thorpe challenging still in second place. Third in yellow and black is Martin McKenna, and Thorpe rides out wide. He's lost power. Something up the bike there, which now means that Glasgow are on a 5-1 with Daz Sumner back in third. Martin McKenna holds second, and Glasgow set for a surprise maximum heat win here in heat 11. Will help to make the scoreline respectable for the Tigers, as Sumner tries to find a way past Martin McKenna. Martin, a 5.5-point man last year, now in his fourth season of National League Speedway with the Glasgow Tigers. Scored 109 points, including 18 bonus last year. For Glasgow, a very impressive prospect, but being challenged very strongly now by Daz Sumner. I think you can put alongside him in that category. The winner in white, Steve Lawson. Second in yellow and black, Martin McKenna. And Daz Sumner just shut out in third place. Paul Thorpe, of course, retiring during the race. So 5-1 then to Glasgow, and a surprise one at that. Makes the scoreline now Stoke 41, Glasgow 25, 16 points in it, with just 2 heats of racing left here in the league match here at Stoke. Well, Richard, your National League debut there, how did you enjoy it?
Oh, marvellous. First ever ride, it was really good.
Now, what's your experience been up to this point then? Junior League riding here?
Yeah, Junior League riding at Stoke. I've only been riding for 2 years, so I'm quite pleased with it.
How did you start out in the Speedway then?
Well, it was, I used to do scrambling, and I had an injury on the scrambling, and I couldn't ride the scrambling no more, so I decided to do Speedway.
I do remember someone called Kelvin Tatum, who made his England debut today, had a similar story to tell, so that's an impressive start.
Yeah.
Anyway, best of luck. Let's hope we see you in the same position in the future. Thanks very much,
Okay,
Richard.
thanks very much.
Riders coming up to the tapes now for heat 12. 41-25 the score, I'll remind you. Riding in red, Tom Owen chasing a paid maximum here. Beaten only in heat 6 by his partner Paul Thorpe. Coming out in opposition now, Andy Reid, 8 points from his 4 rides. Looking now for double figures, scored in every race so far. He and Steve Lawson, adding up the totals, have scored 18 out of the Glasgow Tigers total of 25. So it looks as if the suspicion at the start of the meeting has been proved correct. A 2-man show here tonight from the Glasgow Tigers. Andy Reid then takes the inside gate, having a chat there with Tom Owen. I think they're sorting out gate positions. Reid on the inside, Owen next to him. Gate 3 in white, Brian Collins. Gate 4 in blue is Graham Jones. So now, can Owen get that paid maximum unbeaten by an opponent, or can Reid inflict the first defeat by a Glasgow Tiger over the Stoke #1 and skipper, Tom Owen? Ready for the tapes to rise, and they do. Owen against Reid going into the first turn, and it's the Scot, or at least the Scottish rider, who leads. Andy Reid, if my memory serves me right, from the Manchester area. Andy Reid leads, very much an adopted Scot these days. Second in red, Tom Owen. Third in blue is Graham Jones. Fourth in white, Brian Collins. So Brian Collins has had a poor night of it. Only 2 points from his first 3 rides and trailing in last here. But Reid has got the jump over Tom Owen here, and Owen heading for his first defeat by a visiting rider here tonight at Chesterton. Andy Reid coming into his own as the meeting progresses. Took a win in his 3rd ride, then the 2nd place behind Tom Owen in heat 10, looking now for revenge in the 12th race. Andy Reid seeking to get the Glasgow score respectable. They do stand a chance now of hitting the 30-point marker. If they get the 3 in here and then get 2 in heat 13, they will have made that. That is very much the yardstick by which away performances are measured, or at least losing performances. If you can get the 30, at least you've not been annihilated. That's the usual one. The winner in yellow and black, Andy Reid. Tom Owen's paid maximum disappears there in the dust rising from Reid's back wheel. Third in blue, Graham Jones. Brian Collins at the back, ineffective, to say the least, here tonight at Stoke. 44-28 with 1 race to go. Stoke signal potters can't make the 50 mark now, but Glasgow, of course, can look for that target of 30. Tom Owen beaten for the first time by an opponent in heat 12. Well, Andy, it's been a difficult night for Glasgow, but you've been able to get a couple of wins for yourself, haven't you?
That's right. I started off my first race, and I couldn't believe how quick the boys were going. I was starting to feel a bit not very confident in my machinery and the way I was riding. On the last lap, I noticed that I wasn't really keeping it flat out, and so I went out determined to try and hold it flat out. And as the night went on, I got better. As I went out for my last ride there, Tom Owen came up to me at the start and he said, "You trapper, Reedy," he said, "you keep doing it on me." So that gave me the confidence again to try and make the start on him, and I expected Tom to fly by like he's been doing all night, but thankfully I kept in front.
What's with the all-white bike this year? I see the white fillers.
Well, actually, Steve Lawson takes the credit for that. After watching the cycle racing, I think it was the American team, and I don't know if it was in the Olympics, and they said that they got 3 seconds faster with these spoilers on, so we thought, well, we'll just try it in the winter, see what happens. And we don't think it makes any faster, but we couldn't believe the difference in handling it can make. So in the winter, we all made one, and I appear to be the only one with one left on up to now, but Steve says he's going to try it, but I don't know when.
Well, thanks very much. An interesting experiment. Best luck for the rest of the season. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you.
Reid. So now, the riders line up at the start for Heat 13, the final race of the night. Those words, interesting ones there from Andy Reid. And on the inside in white, we have Steve Lawson. Next to him in red is Paul Thorpe. Gate 3 in yellow and black, Colin Caffrey. Gate 4 in blue is Mike Wilding. Well, in this one, Thorpe would have been looking for a paid maximum, but for that retirement in Heat 11. Wilding's got 6 paid 7, Lawson's got 10, and Caffrey's got 1 paid 2 from his 3 starts. Here we go then with the final race of the night. Can Glasgow get the 2 points for 30? That is the question, and indeed it looks like they'll get more than that, because Lawson's away. Second in blue is Wilding. Third in red is Paul Thorpe, and Colin Caffrey's at the back. Caffrey out of the saddle for the opening matches of the season, was replaced by Kenny Brailsford and also Jeff Powell in the opening matches. Quite a marathon performer, performs in the Glasgow Marathon on a few occasions. This time, though, he performs on the shale of Stoke Speedway and on his knees. Getting away from the bike, it looks as if the race will continue if the bike can be got off in time. Indeed it is. Coming down the home straight then, Steve Lawson in fine control. Second in blue, Mike Wilding. Third in red, Paul Thorpe. No stoppage in this Heat 13. The bike was off the track in time. Coming in for the final lap flag. Glasgow heading for respectability here tonight at Luma Road after a real runaway start for the Stoke Signal Potters. They've not pressed home their advantage for a high score here at Luma Road, although it's a comfortable one. Coming around the pit turn for the final time, in for the win. The Glasgow team certainly made a meeting of it in the closing stages. The winner in white, Steve Lawson. Second in blue, Mike Wilding. Third in red, Paul Thorpe. A 3-3 drawn heat with that 4 for Colin Caffrey at the back. And the final score here at Luma Road is Stoke 47, Glasgow 31. And out of that, just looking at the score chart, Lawson has 13 and Reid has 11. That's 24 out of 31 coming from the big 2 of Steve Lawson and Andy Reid. Paul Thorpe headed in that one, Heat 13, but nonetheless a profitable night for the Stoke Signal Potters. Colin Caffrey, in the meantime, has to sort out the bike and set off on the long push back into the pits, unless he can get that bike started, of course. Colin, the product of the old days at Paisley, Love Street, in the days when Speedway raced at the St Mirren football ground in Scotland. Those days seem long gone now. His brother Fred also used to race at one time, but it's Colin who's been the longer-lasting rider. Been on the scene now since the 1976 season in the National League, although I do believe he rode second halves in 75. Not too successful, though, here tonight, but only his second meeting of the season. Well, Tom, a profitable night for the Signal Potters here tonight with a 16-point win over Glasgow. How satisfied were you with the events tonight?
I think the team rode great in all. You know, I was a little bit disappointed not to make it a full 15 or a paid 15 at the end. I dropped 1 point in my last ride, but as a team goes, it was very good showing.
Yes, Andy Reid just got the jump on you there going in Heat 12, didn't he?
Yeah, I was debating which gate to take, really. I should have took gate 4, then I was further away from him, I thought, you know.
Yes, I noticed in the match against Long Eaton when we were down here last time that you and Nigel and also Paul Thorpe seem to be winning everything off gate 4.
Yeah, but it seems a little bit dry tonight. The track, as you can see, it's got a camber on it, and 4 must have dried out sooner than the others. And I don't risk it tonight for some reason, you know.
How are you enjoying your times now with the Stoke Potters?
Oh, it's great, isn't it? You know, I have a great time, you know. I've got quite a good business, and Saturday night Speedway suits me fine, you know.
What about having the kid brother up at Ellesmere Port for the local derbies now?
Oh, well, you know, he means it. It's very good. I don't seem to ride to my best against my brother, but never fear, you know, we enjoy it, we have good fun at it.
Now, looking at the team as a whole, once Nigel Crabtree went down with that ankle injury, the team seemed to stutter a little here at Saluma Road with a draw against Birmingham, then the defeat by the Gunners. Do you think, though, that you can cover for Nigel's absence okay?
Yeah, I think what we've done, actually, the shock of losing Nigel, it hit us all, and then we got over it, and we seem to have gone well. Like, I seem to have clicked a bit, and it's making life a lot easier.
How about yourself? How are you set up for this year? Got any good sponsors?
Yeah, I've got Brian Mottram, Lawson Motor Bodies, and also Harvey Tyres from Longton, a local firm. And I'm working on another one, which could be bigger still, but I've got to work on that one yet.
So all in all, looking for maybe a 10-point average this year?
I did think, when I sat down and think of it in the winter, that I would struggle to make a 10-point, but after 3 league matches, it's looking good, you know.
Well, best of luck for the season. Thanks very much, Tom.
Thanks very much.
Well, now the Signal Potters come round on their lap of honour, including also Nigel Crabtree. He's been well involved here. And as the riders come round, let's just reflect on the meeting that we've just seen by taking a look at the score chart for the Stoke Signal Potters. At number 1, Tom Owen, you just saw him there in that interview, 13 plus 1 bonus points. Rider replacement at number 2 for Nigel Crabtree. Paul Thorpe, 9 plus 2 bonus points. Graham Jones, 4 plus 1 bonus. Mike Wilding, 8 paid 9. Ian Stead, 8 paid 9 from only 3 starts. Surprisingly, he didn't get an extra ride. Daz Sumner, 5 plus 1 bonus. A good performance by Daz, his best ever in the National League in his short career. And Richard Smith failed to score on his 1 debut ride in the NL. For the Glasgow Tigers, Steve Lawson, 13 points from 5 starts. Martin McKenna, 3 paid 4. Brian Collins, 2 points, failed to beat a Signal Potter all night. Colin Caffrey, 1 paid 2, just picked up that 1 point. Andy Reid, 11 points from 5 starts. Jim Beaton, 1 point, and David Cassell's 0. So the reserves picked up only the 1 point in Heat 2, the reserves race. All in all, a very long tail for the Glasgow Tigers with only, or rather with 5 riders picking up only 7 points between them. They've got to work on that department. Really, it's a case of as you were, because they're not one of the strongest sides away from home. It really is Lawson and Reid that do carry them on many occasions away. This time, Lawson and Reid picking out 24 out of the 31. And in the end, perhaps the scoreline not emphasising Stoke's dominance quite as much as it could have done. Mind you, Glasgow, look at this, 3-3 in Heat 9, 10, 12 and 13, and a 5-1 in Heat 11. They outscored the Signal Potters in the final 5 races here at Chesterton. Well, Steve, 13 points for yourself, but the rest of the team tended to struggle apart from Andy Reid, didn't they?
Yeah, I think our lads like a bit of dirt on the track, and there wasn't much dirt about tonight, so that put us off a bit.
What about those races with Tom Owen? They seem to be pretty good ones.
Yeah, Tom jumped out in the gate on me twice there, and I was annoyed with myself for letting him do it, but I felt as though I had the speed on him, but he just rides the right line for this place, and once he's sitting on that line, you need something special to go around him.
Well, of course, in '84, you were the top man in the National League. Now in '85, there's a load of British League men coming along. What do you say to them all? Hands off for that number 1 position?
Oh, no, I don't like making predictions. It's going to be tough this year. As long as I finish with a decent average, that's all I'm bothered about. As long as I can get myself a decent average, on a personal note, that is, and I'm not talking about ambitions for the team, but if I can finish with I'm aiming for a 10 average, and if I can get that, I'll be happy.
What about the team for this year? It's pretty well unchanged from the '84 side, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're the only team that's got the same lineup as last year, and I'm pleased to say that, because we've got some useful lads, and I expect them to improve their averages this year, so I think we'll be pretty competitive.
Now, a couple of those are your own trainees, aren't they? I think it was Jeff Powell there. He used to be a mechanic at one time, wasn't he? And you've got your own training track up there on the Cumbrian coast, haven't you?
Yeah, we've got our own little track there. We race 250 Hondas in speedway bikes. Jeff Powell, yeah, he's pushing for a team place now. He actually beat Martin Yates at Glasgow last week. He passed him, and he travels with me, and I'll tell you what, he never shut up all the way home from Glasgow last week.
What's it like, though, still having to do that haul up from Workington up to Glasgow? Still enjoying it?
Oh, it's a doddle, yeah. You just sort of get in the car and you sort of, you're on automatic, and you sort of wake up and you're at Glasgow, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. How are things, though, up at Craighead Park these days?
Pardon?
How are things up at Craighead Park these days? It's a while since I've been up there.
Yeah, it's a tidy little place. A lot of people don't like the track, but it's maybe not everybody's cup of tea. But it's holding its own. Yeah, it isn't the nicest place in the world, but far from being the worst.
Keep Speedway alive in the west of Scotland.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, okay, thanks very much, Steve. We hope to maybe see you up there sometime in the year and, of course, catch you on the southern tracks during the year. Thanks very much, Steve Lawson.
Right, thanks. Cheers.
Well, now we have time for an extra race here at Lumer Road. It's going to be the Grand Slam, one of the Grand Slam qualifying races. Heading off in reds, Paul Thorpe. In blue will be Ian Stead. In white, Andy Reid. And in yellow and black, Jim Beaton. Now, the situation this year in National League second halves is that the 3 qualifying races for the second half individual competition, the points count for the Grand Slam semi-finals and final down at Peterborough on July the 20th. The scoring is quite simple: 4 for a win, 3 for second, 2 for third and 1 for last. The top man from each National League team qualifies based on these points, and then the next highest 11 scoring riders also go in to form the 32 rider field for the 2 semi-finals at Peterborough in that Festival of the Speedway on July the 20th. 60 heats of racing, followed up by the 24 heat, or indeed I think it's, yeah, it is 24 heats, 14 tournament finals the following day. That's one not to forget about in Speedway this year. The lineup then for this Grand Slam race: on the inside in white, Andy Reid. In blue, it's Ian Stead. Yellow and black, Jim Beaton. And in red, Paul Thorpe. Individual racing now here in the second half at Lumer Road, Newcastle Greyhound Stadium to be precise. Reid hits the front with that specially designed set of wheels. You heard him explain it earlier. It's based on the pedal cyclists in the Olympics, the American cycling team. And they're drifting out on the turn, Jim Beaton in yellow and black. In the meantime, though, Ian Stead looking good there, having to fight the bike around the turn in third place, but there is Andy Reid leading from the man in red, Paul Thorpe. Andy Reid picked up, looking down the list, no, indeed, they've only got the home table listed here, and indeed the leader overall on points for the single parties is Tom Owen on 7. Thorpe also has 7, so he picks up 3 points here. If he holds on for the final lap, it's very much a race between him and Owen for the top qualifying spot from the Signal Potters. A novel system. It was used, I think, actually for World Championship qualifiers a few years back, but never really caught on. But the Grand Slam seems to be a major event this year in the National League if things go as they are at the moment. A win in white for Andy Reid. He picks up 4 points for his personal total with Glasgow. Second in red was Paul Thorpe. He picks up 3 points on the night. Third in blue was Ian Stead. He picks up 2 points, and Jim Beaton finished 4th in yellow and black and picks up 1. An extra race for you here tonight at Lumer Road, seeing Andy Reid ride to another win, this time over Paul Thorpe. Well, indeed, that's all we have time for here at Stoke Speedway, and that's the end of our coverage here from the Staffordshire track. The final score here in the league match: Stoke 47, Glasgow 31, and indeed a 2-man show for the Glasgow Tigers. We hope you've enjoyed